I think we all have memories of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Video games. Getting to experience new cards, play against opponents with new and exciting strategies, or just having the option to play the game when no one else was available. But there is one aspect of the video games I want to hone in on: the promotional cards. I am wary of using the phrase video game exclusive cards because the actual distribution of cards in different regions is so difficult to track. But dauntlessly, I am going to attempt to review the promotional cards released in the North American and European regions, chronologically. First up is the interesting and influential Forbidden Memories, which really deserves a deep dive of its own. The three cards released were Red Eye's Black Metal Dragon, Harpy's Dragon, and Metalmorph. Metalmorph and the Black Metal Dragon go together, so I will start with the trap card. Metalmorph functions as an equip card, giving the equipped monster 300 attack and defense, and during battle offers a rear Yoko-like effect. If you equip Metalmorph to the Red Eye's Black Dragon, you contribute the monster to special summon Red Eye's Black Metal Dragon from the deck, which is such a waste. You gain 100 attack and 100 defense, but you go -1, and you lose the rear Yoko effect. Red Eye's Black Metal Dragon is actually one of the worst monsters in the game, and one which is completely dead when drawn. Then there is Harpy's Pet Dragon, which was not good on release, offering a weak 2-tribute monster which gained attack when you had more Harpy ladies on the field. But during the Zexal formats, the card was used as a target for Harpy's Channeler to bring out rank 7 monsters like Big Eye or Dracosac, which made it an indispensable playmaker. On to Dark Duel Stories. There are a few crowd-pleasing cards: the ace monsters of Blue Eyes White Dragon and Dark Magician, which need no introduction nor evaluation, and Exodia, the Forbidden One, which functions as one of the few competitively viable alternate win conditions in the game. Seiya Ryu is okay. One of those old shiny normal monsters. Irrelevant despite being a bit superior to the Dark Magician. I think this was even a prize card at one point. Acid Trap Hole is part of the Trap Hole series, and for its time was a pretty good card. It saw play in GOAT format as an anti-face down tech card, although this may largely be attributed to the limitation of Nobleman of Crossout. Then we have Salamandra, which is underwhelming compared to more modern equip spells, but in the early days, this was such an improvement over Burning Spear. Onto Eternal Duelist Souls, we see 3 main character cards. Exchange is a -1 and not good. I sort of love the card though, or at least the idea. The card is super interesting, acting as an excellent disruption tool. I guess you could mitigate the card disadvantage by giving your opponent a complete boat anchor that they cannot use. A use for Red Eye's Black Metal Dragon. Personally, I would love to see more cards printed that interact with the opponent's hand and deck. But to be clear, Exchange is a gimmick card, and not a particularly good one. Graceful and Skull Dice are 2 of Joey's Gamble cards, with almost inverse effects. The 2 cards are team-wide buffs and debuffs, and at spell speed 2 they function as combat tricks. And although niche, I think Limiter Removal and Shrink fill that role much better. Duelist of the Roses is a wild game. It is a little like Dungeon Dice Monsters, played on a grid with different terrain bonuses, but has the same card fusion mechanic as Forbidden Memories. And I bring it up because the game is much more interesting than the promotional cards. The 3 Magnet Warriors, which are pretty pointless without Valkyrion, which happen to come with Stairway to the Destined Duel. This is also the first regional discrepancy to mention, as Spanish language regions got Blue Eyes White Dragon, Dark Magician, and Exodia the Forbidden One, which we have already talked about. There is a theme of regional discrepancies and redundancy, which continues throughout the entire era. Next is the Sacred cards, with Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth, Rear Yoko, and Negate Attack. Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth might be the most cumbersome card in the game, requiring 2 specific monsters to remain on the field for precisely 6 turns, which means that you can actually miss the window and not even be able to summon the moth. I would easily put the card in the top 10 worst monsters. Ryoko is a card I mentioned earlier, which is a good way to get over a big monster, but not necessarily meta-breaking. On paper, Negate Attack looks better than Waboku, being a bit faster since it is a counter trap. Waboku saw competitive play, specifically in Gladiator Beast decks, since it let the monsters tag out without having to worry about being destroyed by battle. On the regio-specific side, the European, French, German, and Italian regions got Exchange, Graceful Dice, and Skull Dice. The Spanish regions got Red Eyes Black Metal Dragon, Harpy's Dragon, and Metalmorph. Yu-Gi-Oh! The Falsebound Kingdom is going to be the last game I talk about this video. In North America, the promotional cards were Zoa, Metal Zoa, and Metalmorph. Just kidding on that last one, it would make too much sense. Instead, Goblin Fan is included. Zoa and Metal Zoa have the same set of problems as Red Eyes Black Metal Dragon, but with the added problem of having to hunt for a copy of Metalmorph. Goblin Fan is a card that I like more than I should. It is an odd little floodgate, which would feel at home as a skill card. It is too narrow to really play, but at least it shuts down Magician of Faith. European, French, German, and Italian regions got Fairy King Truesdale, Cypher Soldier, and Slate Warrior. Fairy King Truesdale is one of those super weird cards where the name doesn't quite feel right. This card gives your plant-type monsters 500 attack and defense points, while it remains in defense position. Which is okay, I guess. Cypher Soldier is one of my favorite tech cards. Very format dependent, but incredibly strong against warrior monsters. 3300 attack normal summon monster is always impressive. The wiki says that Europe got Kinetic Soldier, which either means that the wiki needs to be updated, or that Europe never got the erratum to change the name of Kinetic Soldier so that it would fit into the Cypher archetype. Slate Warrior is very strong, with high original attack points, which can even be increased through its own effect, and, when it is destroyed as a result of battle, leaves a permanent stat drain effect. The card even brushed with the ban list. Needless to say, the card was good. Spanish regions got the best set of cards in my opinion, with Slate Warrior, Sinister Serpent, and Harpy's Feather Duster. Sinister Serpent is a +1 every turn, or at least it was before the erratum, but the card was pretty much a staple in any deck which could use discard fodder. Harpy's Feather Duster is the best spell and trap removal card in the game, as an asymmetric back row wipe, and, as a result, has been banned for quite some time. In my opinion, these three cards would have been much more appropriate candidates for the sacred cards. First game of the list is Rashif of Destruction, which uses the name of an ancient plague god and is represented in the game by the card Rashif the Dark Being, which is not one of the promotional cards for the game. Instead, they are Dark Magician support. Knight's title special summons the Dark Magician Knight by tributing Dark Magician, and has a pretty forward-thinking design since it can special summon Dark Magician Knight from the hand, deck, or graveyard. Usually, these sort of spell cards that tribute to special summon lead to a loss of card advantage. But upon special summon, Dark Magician Knight pops a card, which is good. Sage's Stone is a convenient way to special summon Dark Magician, but it does require Dark Magician Girl to be on your side of the field. So, not a terrible tutor. The French, German, Italian, and Spanish regions received the Sacred Card promos, Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth, Ryoko, and Negate Attack, which were covered in Part 1. Stairway to the Destined Duel is pretty impactful as it brings Sinister Serpent and Harpy's Feather Duster, but also Valkyrion the Magnet Warrior, which gives purpose to Alpha, Beta, and Gamma. As a boss monster, the summoning mechanic is clunky, but it does have the option to tag out and bring back the 3 smaller Magnet Warriors, if desired. This card did see some play in gimmick decks, as it is one of the best materials used to make Evil Hero Dark Gaia to facilitate OTK strategies. The European and French regions got Seiya Ryu, Acid Trap Hole, and Salamandra. Power of Chaos, Yugi the Destiny, is the first in a 3-game series. and has the distinction of having 5 promotional cards, which was not replicated in the Kaiba or Joey versions. Kuribo is the first hand trap in the game, and although not great, can still come in handy. Dark Magician is re-released again, but it makes more sense to go alongside Thousand Knives, which is good, as conditional removal that does not lose card advantage. Anti-Spell Fragrance is sort of a meta-breaking card, and I mean that in the anti-meta deck sense. This card shuts off pendulum strategies completely. Needless to say, the card has appreciated over time. Last for this game is Windstorm of Etiqua, which Pojo put on their top 50 cards back in the day. Personally, I don't see the -1 to justify it as a disruption tool, or even to push damage. World Championships 2004 is all reprints. North America got Fairy King Truesdale, Cypher Soldier, and Slate Warrior. European, French, and Italian regions got Valkyrion the Magnet Warrior, Sinister Serpent, and Harpy's Feather Duster. Spanish regions got Exchange, Graceful Dice, and Skull Dice. Destiny Board Travelers does not have the Destiny Board or Spirit Letters, but instead comes with 3 battle-focused monsters. Eames the Infinity is a snowball monster, getting stronger after each successful battle, but not worth the time and material investment in my opinion. Twin-Headed Beast is a double attacker. Again, nothing to write home about, but DD Assailant steals the show. This card was limited for some time, and in my opinion is on par with DD Warrior Lady, but a bit stronger. Overall, an interesting series of promos. Dawn of Destiny has a pretty familiar name since we've already had Yugi the Destiny and Destiny Board Travelers. A lot of creativity in the naming department in Konami. The North American release of the game came with the illegal version of the Winged Dragon of Ra, which is unable to be used in a duel. The other regions got Mesmeric Control, which looks to me to be even more useless than Windstorm of Etiqua, and I'm going to leave it at that. Otherwise, all regions got Dark Sage and Widespread Ruin. Dark Sage is one of the few monsters which special summons itself from the deck, although both Red Eye's Black Metal Dragon and Metal Zoa share that distinction, and were also released as video game promotional cards. This card is very hard to get out, requiring a Dark Magician to be on the field and a successful Time Wizard effect to go off. The upside to that terrible summoning condition, though, is a pre-erratum Demok effect, getting a spell from grave to hand. So, that is something. To me, Widespread Ruin comes off as a niche version of Sakuretsu Armor, but it does have the advantage of hitting a monster which is not currently attacking. That is a pretty lackluster card to end the segment on. One might even call it a widespread dud. The Power of Chaos is back for revenge, specifically Kaiba the Revenge. Like Yugi the Destiny having Dark Magician, there is Kaiba's signature monster, the Blue Eyes White Dragon. This monster is a crowd favorite and even won World Championships that one time. The other 2 promos are interesting. Aqua Chorus is a card that you might have to read a few times, and I am going to do my best. If there exist 2 or more monsters with the same name on the field, those monsters gain 500 attack and defense. This, of course, is me paraphrasing the text, but I think it is good for problem solving. I guess this is a Harpy Lady support card? Or something? This might be worse than the Seal of Orichalcos. Plus, it affects your opponent's monsters as well. Seal of the Ancients is the last card for this game. Paying 1,000 life points for information is worth it in my opinion, but 1,000 life points and a card is not worth it. This card reminds me of a man with Wajat, but the best version of this card is probably in the form of the skill card Mind Scan, which is more limited in scope, but does not lose card advantage. Joey the Passion is the last in the Power of Chaos trilogy, and again features Joey's signature card, the Red Eyes Black Dragon. If Blue Eyes represents power, and Red Eyes represents the potential, I suspect that Red Eyes will be good one day. Sebek's Blessing is based on another Egyptian god like Ra. This card gives your monster lifelink or life store, retroactively. This card is almost a reprint of Enchanted Javelin, but is a turn faster since it is a quick play spell, but at the downside of being very limited in its actual effect. Also, I just want to point out that the wiki has this as the official picture for Enchanted Javelin, which makes me think that the card is properly obscure, and this wasn't intended to be a functional reprint. Sword of Dragon's Soul is warrior support, giving a warrior-type monster a respectable 700 attack points. But it is also an anti-dragon tech card, because at the end of the battle phase, it destroys the dragon regardless of the result of battle, which in the grand scope of the game is okay, but very on point for a Joey card. Capsule Monsters is an area of Yu-Gi-Oh! That I will cover one day, but not today. Abyss Soldier is excellent, which might be surprising. The card was even limited for a while because it was such a good disruption tool. In the era, Sinister Serpent was the go-to discard fodder. But I want to point out that the card fits well into a Mermail deck, with Dragoons being an excellent discard target. Inferno Hammer has excellent art, and the conditional Book of Moon effect might make the card slightly better than Eames the Infinity, at least. Teva has potential, and I mean that sincerely. In OTK formats, this card buys a turn by removing the battle phase. I would say it is not as good as One Day of Peace, but since that card is limited, Teva could be a useful tech card. 7 Trials of Glory World Championship 2005 is a game I played recently, but I think that the copy I bought was secondhand and therefore did not come with this set of cards, which is a bummer. Silent Swordsman level 7 has a lot of the same problems as Metal Zoa. Necessary support is not included alongside it, and there is a terribly clunky way to special summon it from the deck. I plan on doing a more detailed video on level monsters later, but they generally have decent to good effects, balanced by being delayed a turn or two. Silent Swordsman level 7 stops spell cards, but Spell Canceller or even Mechanical Hound are more convenient. Kaiba Man is Blue Eyes support, and is now outclassed by Maiden with the Eyes of Blue, but for its time, it was okay. Last for this game is Mind Control. Mind Control is not as good as Brain Control, or at least the old Brain Control, but the card continues to get better and better as new summoning mechanics are released. Since the monster which you take can be used for fusion, synchro, Xyz, and even link material now. I imagine this card will be banned soon. The last game I am going to be covering is Nightmare Troubadour, and that name has such a nice ring. Silent Magician level 4 and level 8 go together, which is already a lot better than the Silent Swordsman level 7. Silent Magician level 4 gains a spell counter each time the opponent draws a card, gaining attack for each spell counter. Then, the turn after the 5th spell counter is accumulated, it upgrades into the level 8 Magician. This is super cumbersome, and can even be on the level of perfectly ultimate Great Moth in some cases. They even have the same attack points, but the Moth has 2,000 more defense points. Silent Magician level 8 is unaffected by your opponent's spell cards, which is a marginal upside. I just don't see it. Magician Circle is a pretty good tutor, special summoning a spellcaster type monster from each player's deck, which can have the ability to disrupt cards like Magician of Faith. But I can see so much more potential in the card. I couldn't find any good lockdown spellcaster monsters which fit the criterion, like how Jinzo works well with Psychic Shockwave, but at the very least it can tutor out specific combo pieces, or push damage in the battle phase. It can even fetch Silent Swordsman level 4, so that's an upside. It is fun looking back at where all these cards came from, as well as learning about the regional differences, and I hope this series helps you to appreciate an aspect of Yu-Gi-Oh! Which is slowly disappearing because of digital distribution. I will pick up with the GX era later, but for now, here is sort of an endorsement for which Yu-Gi-Oh! Games are worth buying factory sealed. This is a bit of a change of pace, not just exhibiting video game footage on the channel for the first time, but within the pace of the game. This sort of review is going to be less focused on gameplay, given that Yu-Gi-Oh! Video games are more or less direct adaptations of the card game. The same could be said about the game's controls, as it seems the various titles use more or less the same game engine. Instead, I'm going to focus a bit more on the distinguishing characteristics of each game. I will be posting a video with some heavily commentated gameplay later, for those who might be interested. Oh, and before you ask, I will not be using the game music or sound effects. The music for this game sounds like this. It isn't bad per se, but it feels a lot closer to Bubble Bobble than Yu-Gi-Oh! Please forgive the GBA's limited graphics. This is being played on emulator, so some of the functionality is also removed, like the ability to link battle and card trade. Deck edit is how you change your deck, and that is pretty necessary given the cards you start out with. There is a password system too, which can unlock most cards which were printed at the time by using the ID number at the bottom of the card, with the exception of Cocoon of Evolution, which is yet another reason why Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth is horrible. The campaign starts with 5 characters: Tristan, Taya, Yugi, Joey, and Bakura, all of which you can challenge with the results being tallied on the campaign screen, but also on the record screen, which I guess is helpful for looking at your win-loss ratio. Last on the main menu is Calendar, which is set to January of 2001 at the beginning of the game. This means that the game takes place before the first sets were released in North America. Events on the calendar are, of course, duel-focused, with weekly duels and weekend duels. But the special event of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Magazine is actually pretty cool. Most likely a reference to the V-Jump magazines, the event comes with free cards, which is a good way to start talking about cards. In addition to your initial deck, you get packs for winning games. There is no currency system in the game, unlike later titles with duel points, so packs are awarded based on performance. In later titles, the password system is used to get a specific card, and generally at a relatively high price. But without the currency system, you can just type in the code of any card you want and receive one. This is probably game-breaking when it comes to difficulty, but the game is already easy. The main difficulty arises not from strategy, but from variance. It is very normal summon focus, and the monsters are quite weak, but the spells and traps are ridiculous. Raigeki and Mirror Force just win games, which really harkens back to the first era of Yu-Gi-Oh! Power cards win games, and as weird as it may seem, with only one normal summon per turn, Trap Hole was a power card, which helps to explain why it got on the game's first Forbidden and Limited list. Final evaluation time. Is the game worth recommending? There is nothing spectacular or inventive about the game, no story or increasing complexity. You have access to anything you want at the beginning of the game if desired. To me, the main draw is that simplified gameplay where you scarcely have to worry about traps, and almost every monster is a normal monster. If you are ever in the mood for the caveman era of Yu-Gi-Oh!, it is definitely a more convenient option than hunting down copies of Beautiful Headhuntress. Definitely a game that lives or dies based on your nostalgia. There is an air of mystery and wonder when it comes to Forbidden Memories, with even the title sparking immediate intrigue. Forbidden Memories finds itself in a state of transition in the history of Yu-Gi-Oh!, borrowing elements from the Bandai game, the first season of the anime, and even bringing some of its own mechanics to the table. And I think mechanics are an excellent place to start when talking about the game. Similar to the Duelist Kingdom rules, you can normal summon any monster without tribute. Every monster is a normal monster, so you don't have to worry about effects. Oddly enough, you can set a monster, or even put one into face-down attack position. That brings back memories. There are a few more game rules, like drawing till 5 cards in hand each turn, like rush duels, and being limited to play only one card per turn at times. I want to double back a bit and talk about Guardian Stars though. Arguably the game's most striking feature. Yes, astrology in Yu-Gi-Oh! Instead of attributes, monsters are grouped based on astrological signs, with each monster belonging to 2 signs. You can select which Guardian Star protects the monster on summon, with each sign having advantages and disadvantages amongst each other. This adds a level of strategy and can give you an edge in battle. I just want to read out loud what the wiki has to say about how monsters are categorized under Guardian Stars. Mercury typically represents dark spellcasters and dark warriors. Sun typically represents light monsters such as fairies. Moon typically represents dark monsters such as fiends and zombies. Venus typically represents illusory monsters. Most of them are spellcasters, fiends, or fairies. Mars typically represents fire monsters. Jupiter typically represents forest creatures, such as beast warriors, insects, and plants. Saturn typically represents wind monsters. Uranus typically represents rock monsters and earth warriors. Pluto typically represents machines and thunder-type monsters. Neptune typically represents water monsters. Ah yes, such a simple and intuitive system. Fusion summoning works in a weird way too. 2 cards are selected, then fused. There is quite a lot of rules on what type of fusion materials end up working together. If one of the fusion materials is stronger than all possible fusion monsters, the fusion will fail. Emphasis on all possible monsters, because like the anime, you can attempt to fuse pretty much anything, and a lot of them will end up with stronger monsters. Sometimes this is based on certain type combinations. For instance, a pyro and an animal create Flame Cerberus, or a jar and a dark spellcaster make Ushioni, which has the effect of making the card's flavor text feel a lot more appropriate. I said animal type earlier, and although all the monster typing from the Duel Monsters era exists in the game, there are various other typing and attributes that the game looks at when determining which fusion monster to make, or even deciding whether or not your equip card suits the monster. You can see this in the Bandai game as well, with Cyber Shield indicating a female-like monster as a target. The Bandai game can feel a lot like Munchkin, where rules disputes are settled over bouts of bickering. Nuh-uh, Kairyushin is totally female. At least in the digital world, there are no quarrels, although the results are often baffling. There is a lot more depth in the fusion mechanics, and I will be leaving a link to a more comprehensive guide in the description. Now, if it just takes 2 monsters to make a fusion monster, how does ritual summoning work? Rituals require a specific ritual spell, which is blue for some reason, and unlike the main game, where the total star threshold needs to be met or exceeded to ritual summon a monster, the ritual monsters in the game have specific materials. For example, Mask of Shine and Dark requires the ritual spell Construct of Mask, Mask of Darkness, Masked Clown, and Masked Sorcerer, which is way too much work. And is such a ridiculous waste, as Mask of Shine and Dark has such a cool artwork. The same goes for Psycho Puppet, and it would be wonderful to have these cards find their way into the TCG, if for nothing else, to provide higher resolution artwork. Bottom line is fusion summoning is for monsters with 2 materials, and ritual summoning is for chumps. I think it is time to look at the ways Forbidden Memories shape the TCG, specifically how cards stack up. Sparks is made even more useless, inflicting just 50 points of direct damage. So burn is not so good. What about life point gain? Here is Daienkito Cure Master. Any guesses on how many life points it heals? 50? 500? 1,000 like in the TCG? Try 5,000 life points. I think the card might actually be worth considering at that point. Now, since Sparks is so powerful, there's a trap card that reflects burn damage, Goblin fan, which makes both more sense with the card's artwork and is a lot better than the video game promotional card in my opinion. On that note, Zoa and Metal Zoa are still bad, but you do not have to run Metal Zoa in the main deck at least. Metalmorph is no longer a buff card, just a transformation card. Another series of cards which found its way into early TCG sets were the Type Equip cards. Machine Conversion Factory for machines, Beast Fangs for beasts, Book of Secret Arts for spellcasters, Dark Energy for fiends, Dragon Treasure for dragons, Electro Whip for thunder, Follow Wind for winged beast, Laser Cannon Armor for insect, Legendary Sword for warriors, Insect Moon for beast warriors, Power of Kaishin for aquas, Raise Body Heat for dinosaurs, Silver Bow and Arrow for fairy, Vile Germs for plants, and Violet Crystal for zombie. I guess no one cares about rock or pyro type monsters. As a kid, I tried to collect all of these cards, assuming that there was one for each type, but reality is often disappointing. Other iconic mass destruction cards like Raigeki and Harpy's Feather Duster debuted in the game as well, but I am more interested in some of the unique type hosing cards. Acid Rain destroys machine, Breath of Life destroys rocks, Eradicating Aerosol destroys insects, Eternal Drought destroys fish, Exile of the Wicked destroys fiends, Last Day of Witch destroys spellcasters, Warrior Elimination destroys warriors, and the card which has not yet gotten a TCG released is Sun Shower, which destroys zombies. I just think that this set of mass destruction cards are unique and interesting, and maybe even good side deck tech cards once in a blue moon. Moving on from the mechanical overview, I pose the question, is Forbidden Memories worth playing now? And the answer is a resounding yes! Followed by a timid maybe. The game is wacky in all the best ways, and just filled with some of the most interesting and macabre artwork in the game. Not to mention the stellar music, which I have been showcasing all video. And I just want to give a moment to let the music really shine. Excellent work by Naoko Ishii, Waichiro Ozaki, and Hiroshi Tanaba. Beyond the impact on the TCG, Forbidden Memories' legacy might be the speedrunning community, as the speedrun is very technical with advanced techniques like RNG manipulation. It is fascinating to see the game run at a high level in either the RNG or no RNG manipulation categories, and I strongly recommend watching the commented world record videos. Overall, I think the game is worth remembering, if for nothing else, as a weird evolutionary offshoot from the primordial Yu-Gi-Oh! And, although often overlooked, the game has definitely not been forgotten. I am looking forward to returning to these unusual mechanics with Duelist of the Roses next year.